Blast me to Siphos! It's time for the Mad Merlin's Warhammer 40,000 Imperium journey. Episode 27, Part 2, Painting and Mission. Hello and welcome back to the Mad Merlin's Warhammer 40,000 Imperium journey. We're back for issue 27 and we're moving on to painting our Haemeotrope Reactor. So, as you can see, I've given my Haemeotrope Reactor a spray of lead belcher, but we're going to give it one last coat just to make sure we've got everywhere. So, I'll just be using the paint guide in the magazine for this. As it's a nice, easy way to get our model up to a good gaming standard, and we'll be adding more details to it as we go through the collection. So a little bit of watered down lead belcher on our brush, just going to go over all the areas. I'm using a 6mm brush from WH Smith, but any other large brush will do. The large base brush from the collection is a good one to use. Or even the large dry brush. If you are painting lead belcher on by hand, just make sure you get 3 good coats down before you move on to any other colours. Okay then, with our lead belcher down and dry, we have a nice solid coat that we can move forwards. And speaking of non-oil, that is our next step, to give an all-over shade using this wash. As it's a rather large area, I suggest again using a nice large brush. If you've got the subscriber gifts, your large base brush will be ideal. Magazine says to use your large dry brush, but myself, I picked up a large shade brush. This is a nice brush with a rather chunky head that will hold quite a lot of wash and make applying it a lot easier. So, load up our brush from the pool on our palette, and we can start applying it all over the lead belcher. If it starts pooling anywhere too much, like above the eye there, just scoop it up and move it around. Make sure we work the wash into all the recesses we can, so it helps pick out all that lovely detail. Once we've washed the entire surface, the model, and let it dry, we can move on to our next steps. There we go. Our wash is finally dry. As you can see, we've got a nice grimy appearance to our reactor. So the next colour we're going to need is clorox white, and this is going to start blocking in the left half of the skull and right half of the cog. And I've got a fly buzzing around here. So just get some clorox white onto our palette, thin it down with a touch of water, just so it goes on a little bit smoother. And we can paint in our skull and our cog. So I want to try and avoid all these bits of metal. So go nice and steady. If you didn't make any mistakes, just go back over with some lead belcher. If you just go careful with your brush strokes, you shouldn't make too much mess. So you colour the whole half of the face there, and then we want to go this side of the rivet. And paint this half of the cog design. Using a small brush such as the starter brush, you can easily get in behind all these pipes. Makes it a lot easier. And you might need 2 to 3 coats going over the silver, but otherwise we'll be ready to move on to the next stage once it's finished. There we have clorox white down. Took me 3 coats to get a solid colour, but as you can see, it looks perfect. So next job is to paint the opposite side of the skull and cog with abbott black. Get the focus. There, abbott black. So, using our starter brush again, we'll do the same as last time. Get some on a palette, thin it down with a touch of water, just so it goes a little further, and get a smoother finish. Give our brush a bit of a clean off, so it's not too loaded, and then we can start. So, like I said, doing the opposite half of the cog and skull, being careful of the silver and the white we've already painted. But if you do make any mistakes, just neaten up with the previous colours. Again, going over silver, even with black, you may need a couple of coats. So just let your first coat dry before coming back with a second. Okay, we've got our black and our white down, and our reactor is looking good. A little bit of rough area up along here, but that's nothing I can't touch up later on. So our next colour is going to be mccrag blue. So this is going to be for all the plasma effects, including the furnace at the front, all the vents around the sides, and the grill on the back. We're also going to be picking out a few wires in this colour, just to help break up the overall colour scheme. So we get some mccrag blue on our palette, thin it down, a little bit of water. My Devon accent comes out when I say water. Make sure we ain't got too much on our brush, so give it a wash off quickly. And again, using our starter brush, we can start reaching into all the small details, such as the glass window here for the furnace. Then we got all the plasma vents. Around the outside to do. Just looking at the paint guide, and like I said, pick out a few different wires just to help break up the silver. So our paint guide shows us to paint blue wire here. And this large wire coming in from the side. Again, if you make any mistakes, just cover up with the colours we've already applied. The other area we're going to be painting blue is in between the grill here. So just get a nice tip to your brush. On into the recesses, and if you get any on the top, you can just wipe it away with your finger. Like so. There's no blue wiring on the back, so I'll just get the rest of the blue details painted in, and we'll come back for our red details. Okay, our mccrag blue is down. As you can see, it really helps stand out certain components of the model. So our next colour, as I said, is corn red. So this is again for select wiring, any lights, the panel that the eye vent is attached to, and the pipes. Just get a good puddle on my palette. Thin down as usual. There we go. So easiest part to start on is all these pipes. So try to avoid the raised silver detail. Just adjust the camera a bit. There we go. So I can see what I'm doing. So slowly go up to the raised parts of the pipe with your brush. For the thinner areas, we'll just have to use the tip of our brush and gently fill in. Make any mistakes, if you're quick enough, you can just wipe it away with your finger. But just steadily fill in block colours, like so. Over on the Cog Mechanicus, so we're looking at colouring in the whole of the light. Don't worry about the grill, that's going to be gold later on. You want to paint this wire here. Any lenses, there's one there on the skull, another one there. You want to paint this back plate here. This small wire, just use the side of your brush and gently pick out the top edges of it. Always helps to angle your brush slightly so you can get to all the different areas. And that'll be it. That's the only areas we're going to be focusing on for the red. As long as you get all of those done, we can move on to our last few colours. There we go. Our corn red is down. I got a few little areas I'm going to need to tidy up, but I'll do that in my own time. So we're moving on to our next colour then, which we're returning to metallics. So we're going to start off with Runelord Brass first of all. This is just to pick out some of the cables and vents and other components of the reactor, just to help break up the silver again. So luckily this is a fairly watery paint, so I won't need too much water. A touch, I think. There. So we got a few areas to paint on each. So we'll start on the stacks here. So I'm going to paint this larger vent up here. What I did earlier was I held on to this area while I applied the wash. So the colour wasn't darkened down too much. We might be able to get away with just one coat. Then I'll pick out this area here. Painting all three components of it, leaving the metal rims and number plate. Let's try and have a look at my guide a second. I think that's it for this. The rest of it is going to be retributer armor later on. Yeah. So moving on to the main reactor here, we are looking at painting all these nodules running around the outside with Runelord Brass. Then on the back, we're going to look for these rather chunky looking pipes here. I'm going to pick them out in the Rune Lord brass, like so. Just helps break everything up a little more, add some more colour to a reactor. And just like on top, we're going to pick out all these small pipes here. And that will be it. So just continue working around your model, picking out all these different areas. Just check your painting guide inside the magazine if you're ever unsure, like I've been doing. And then we'll be on to our last colour before our final washes. We've finished all the Rune Lord brass areas, and as you can see, it really does help break up the silver. One thing I noticed after looking at the guide a lot clearer was these ribbed cables are going to be retributer armour. It's the smaller cables in between that you want to paint the Rune Lord brass, and also these cables going up the side here. Speaking of retributer armour, that is our last colour before we return to some washes. As we are going to be applying some Nuln Oil to the white, it might be a good idea to relayer any of your lead belts that you need to, so that you can wash it at the same time. So, here we go then with retributer armour. Again, it's another fairly thin metallic paint, so you won't need too much water, just 1 drop should be enough. And again, we'll start on the stacks. So the things we're going to be looking at are all the fin pipes and the casings for these gauges. So just start blocking in our gold. Doesn't matter if you get any on the actual backs of the dials, we'll be painting those in another stage, in another magazine. So that's how we do the stacks. Looking at the actual reactor itself, so you're painting these large areas here, any caps to piping. So these large pipes here, small areas such as these, and of course those ribbed pipes that I started painting with Rune Lord brass earlier. And on the front, we're going to look at areas like the front viewport here, paint the edges of that. Paint the edge around the eye here. Making sure our brush isn't too overloaded, we're going to paint all the edges on these dials. Like so. And also, again, using the side of your brush and not a lot of paint, we're going to try and pick out, helps to actually do it on camera, the grating over our lights. So again, just going careful with the edge of your brush, gentle strokes so that the area picks up the paint. And we'll do the same on the light up there. Here as well. The edge of that vent. And the caps of these pipes. So do all that, and we'll be back for the last wash stage. And there we have it. I have painted the retributer armor sections and also tidied up all the areas that I've made mistakes. So now we're ready for the next stage, which is to return to non-oil. But this time we're going to apply it to the white areas, but we're going to have to thin it down a tad. So I'll get 2 drops on my palette. And then add in a couple of brushfuls of water. That's about 4 brushfuls of water to 2 parts paint, which should give us now a nice thin version of non-oil. Yeah, look at that. Goes on nice and thin and just helps to darken down as well as blend in some of the recessed detail there. Do this to both sides that are white, and then you want to return to your neat non-oil, so not watered down, to reshade your other areas that you've touched up. There we go. Because that's thinned down, it won't take too long to dry. So what I'm going to do is do my touch-ups with non-oil, and then I'll be back for our final paint. There we go. With our non-oil dry, there's just one colour left to use, which is our Grax Earthshade. And we're going to use that in 2 ways. First, we're using it as a recessed shade on all the red areas. Then we're going to use it as an all-over shade on areas we've painted gold or Boonlord brass. So for the recessed shading, we'll use a thin brush, so we got my starter brush here. But I suggest getting your shade brush, which came with the subscriber gifts, if you have it, to use on the all-over areas. So our first area to do is the red. So like I said, we're going to focus this into the recesses only. So make sure you've got a nice thin tip on your brush and you're not overloaded. And we're just going to gently drop it into the recesses. Don't matter if you get it on the silver, it will help make it aged a bit better. But we'll go around all the red like so. Just helping to define those edges. And then for the all over shade, we'll get our larger shade brush, and we're just going to apply it all over the Runelord brass and Retributer armour. Things like the light, we can do it all over as well, because it will shade the red and the gold at the same time. And then on stuff like the stacks, we've got this large vent up at the top here on the chimney, this section here, and all our gold pipes. To do that over the entire model, and we'll be finished for the moment until we get some new paints later on in the collection. And here we have our finished reactor up to the magazine standard. As you can see, it gives you a really good result. If you've made any mistakes like I have, tidy up with the relative colours. I've got to do a little bit of tidying up on the red there. But other than that, the model is looking quite good, and I can't wait to add some extra colours once they come in the magazine. I think I'll leave the video there, as I've rambled on for quite some time, and I'll be back for video 3 with the battle report. So all what's left for me to do is thank you for watching. Be sure to like, comment, share and subscribe. If you'd like to help the channel out, there's of course my affiliate link, buy me a coffee link, my social medias, as well as my eBay page. So I'll see you next time for more mad content. Goodbye.